The passport scanner beeps, then it beeps again. The customs officer looks up from her screen. She looks at you. She looks back at the screen. She picks up the passport the way you pick up something you're not sure is real. She calls someone over you already know. You've known since the gate at Ben Gurion, since the airport that is no longer called Ben Gurion. The machine reads the biometric chip. The chip is valid, the photo matches your face, the date of issue is legitimate. Everything about the document is technically correct, except the country on the cover. State of Israel. The officer types something, waits, types again. The second officer leans in. They speak quietly in German. You're in Frankfurt, layover, connecting to Toronto, and you catch one word you don't need a translation for. Existiert nicht. Does not exist. The country on your passport does not exist in their system. It was removed from the international database on March 14th, 2043. Today is April 3rd, 2045. You have been carrying a document that proves you are from a place the world has officially agreed to stop recognizing. You are a person. You are standing here. Your hands are warm. Your country is a ghost. The map loads in 3 seconds. You watch it happen on a screen the size of your palm, the kind of screen your grandfather called a miracle and you call a Tuesday. The Eastern Mediterranean renders in tiles. Cyprus, Lebanon, Jordan. The blue of the sea fills in from the edges, and where Israel was, where it had been for 97 years, there is a label that reads, in 4 languages, Administered Territory, UN Transitional Authority. 2043. You are 31 years old. You were born in Netanya, in a maternity ward that overlooked the coast. Your mother kept the hospital bracelet in a drawer with rubber bands and expired coupons. You know this because you saw it every time she sent you for scissors. That drawer is in an apartment that no longer has a legal address. You don't remember the first intifada. You don't remember the second. What you remember is the summer of 2018, when you were 4, and your father drove through a checkpoint and made you hold very still. And the soldier was young, maybe 18, and he looked at your father the way a person looks at something they've been told to be afraid of. You didn't understand it then. You understand it now. School taught you the word security. It taught you the word existential. By the time you were 12, you understood both as naturally as you understood gravity. They were not political words, they were weather. They described the permanent condition of the place you lived and the people you were. The population of Israel at its peak in 2031 was 10.2 million people. 7 million of them were Jewish citizens. You knew the ratio by heart before you knew long division. You were 17 when you met Dror. He was 23, which felt impossibly old. He drove a white Mitsubishi with a crack in the windshield that he said he'd never fix, because it gave him something to look at during traffic. He had served in the 8200 unit, military intelligence, and he spoke about it the way veterans speak about things that changed them, in jokes, and then in silence, and then not at all. He said something to you that first month that you never forgot. He said, "We are not fighting a war, we are managing a timeline." You thought it was profound. You thought he was wise. You were 17. You didn't know that managing a timeline is just a slow way of losing. The seduction of belonging comes in small doses. It doesn't announce itself. It arrives as pride, as purpose, as the particular warmth of being known. Dror introduced you to a circle of young men who believed in something. In 2027, belief was a luxury. Most of your friends believed in real estate prices and streaming services and the algorithm that decided what they felt like watching at 11 on a Thursday. These men believed in the state. Not in what the state was doing, they were not naive. They believed in what it represented. The only Jewish state in the world. A country founded by people who had survived the unsurvivable. A country that had made the desert produce tomatoes and semiconductors and startups worth billions of American dollars. You believed it too. You still believe parts of it, even now. That is the part no one wants to talk about. By the time you were 22, you were doing work you don't describe to people. Not because it was classified, some of it was, and some of it wasn't, but because the honest description would require a longer conversation than anyone wanted to have, and at the end of it they would either condemn you or understand you, and you had stopped being sure which outcome was worse. The Coordinator of Government Activities in the Territories, COGAT, processed 2 million people. You helped build systems. You told yourself the systems were neutral. Systems are never neutral. You knew this. You kept building. The moral compromise doesn't arrive as a choice. It arrives as a series of reasonable steps, each one defensible, none of them monstrous, all of them pointing in the same direction. There was a woman named Layla. You never met her. You saw her file. She was 44 years old, a school teacher from Hebron, and she had applied for a transit permit 17 times in 3 years to visit her daughter who was receiving cancer treatment at Augusta Victoria Hospital in East Jerusalem, 9 kilometers away. 17 times. The application was denied on grounds that could not be appealed under the military order in effect since 2002. Her daughter's name was Noor. She was 9. You saw the file on a Tuesday. On Wednesday you went to lunch. You had a sandwich. It was good. That is what living inside a system does to you. It doesn't make you a monster. It makes you someone who has a sandwich on Wednesday. 2034 was the year the International Court of Justice issued the enforcement ruling. Not the advisory opinion that came in 2024, the one that said the occupation was illegal, the one that most governments noted and filed and forgot about. The 2034 ruling had teeth. It came with a coalition. It came with the threat of primary sanctions, not secondary, primary, from the European Union, which by then had been joined by 12 new members, none of them particularly sympathetic. The United States abstained, not opposed, abstained. You remember where you were when you saw that word. You were on your phone, in your mother's kitchen, and she was making coffee, and the sound of the coffee maker, the specific burble and hiss of it, is permanently embedded in the memory of the worst thing you ever read. She asked if you wanted sugar, and you said yes, and she brought it, and you sat there and you drank it, and neither of you spoke for a very long time. There is a note still on the counter in that kitchen, in her handwriting, that says call Aunt Rivka about Pesach. She never made the call. There was no Pesach that year, not the way there had always been one before. The transition happened faster than anyone predicted, and slower than anyone wanted. The Abraham Accords of 2020 had normalized relations. The Second Accords, in 2036, began restructuring them. By 2039, the term in diplomatic circles was federated arrangement. By 2041, it was shared sovereignty. By 2043, the UN Transitional Authority had offices in what had been the Kiryat, the military headquarters in central Tel Aviv, and the soldiers who stood outside were wearing blue helmets. The population transfer, they did not call it that, officially, was voluntary in the way that most things called voluntary are not quite voluntary. You left in November of 2042. You flew to Vienna, then to Toronto, where there was a community of 80,000 people who had left in the same 18 months. The airport in Tel Aviv still functioned. It was renamed. There is a street in Toronto called Bathurst Street that has been a Jewish street for 70 years. You walk it now and you see the signs and the shops and the old men who came before you and their parents who came before them, and you understand suddenly that your grandparents did this too. Arrived somewhere strange with the textures of the lost place still in their mouths and made something from whatever remained. Your grandfather was from D. He never went back. He said there was nothing to go back to. You used to think he meant the city. Back in Frankfurt, the officers have made a decision. They stamp your passport with a temporary entry code, T7, stateless transit, and hand it back to you without making eye contact. A third officer escorts you to a waiting area with plastic chairs and a vending machine and a window that looks out onto a runway. You sit. You hold the passport. The cover is burgundy. The gold menorah is still embossed on the front, still catches light the same way it always did. You remember the day you got it renewed, 2039, the office on Hyarchon Street, the woman behind the counter who was eating an orange and didn't look up when she slid it under the glass. That woman is also somewhere in Toronto now, probably, or Amsterdam, or Berlin, which has its own particular weight as a destination. In 2045, a researcher at the Van Leer Jerusalem Institute, which now operates out of Amsterdam, published a paper in the Journal of Modern Jewish Studies. The paper was titled The Securitization Trap: How Safety Became the Language of Permanent Control. She argued that the state, from its founding, had organized its identity around the concept of threat, that the threat had become load-bearing, structural, that without it, no one inside the system knew what they were building toward. She was not wrong, she was also not entirely right. The truth is that the state was built by people who were afraid, and the fear was earned, and the fear was real, and the fear became a logic, and the logic became a policy, and the policy became a system, and the system became a thing no single person chose, and no single person could stop. That is the story. That is what this was always about. Not a war, not a religion, not a century of hatred between cousins. It was about what happens when survival becomes the only story a people are allowed to tell about themselves. Your flight to Toronto boards in 40 minutes. You pick up the passport. You put it in your jacket pocket, against your chest. You will keep it. You already know this. You will keep it the way your grandfather kept his Polish identity card, folded in a book he never read, a document for a country that stopped existing before he was 30. He kept it because throwing it away felt like agreeing. You understand that now too. Somewhere right now, there is a 17-year-old sitting in a white Mitsubishi with a cracked windshield. He is listening to someone older tell him what everything means. He is nodding. He thinks he is learning how to protect something. He doesn't know yet that the machine at the airport will one day look at his document and find no country to match it to. He doesn't know yet that the beep will come. You do.